Welcome everyone. My name is Mairi Lowe and this is day 4 of Fashion Revolution Week. I've been to a few very inspiring events so far. I hope you have too, and I hope this is another one as well. So thank you for sparing the time to be here. It's nice to see everyone in the chat saying hello. Um, Today is really an introductory session to systems change. So we're kind of going to scan the surface, some of the language, what it means, why it matters, and how it relates to fashion. I think it's a really important framework and kind of lens and perspective on the world, and that can help us create change together. So I'm really excited to kind of share this with another group of people. And I'm just a systems fanatic, like biggest fangirl over here. So I'm really excited to have some more people to talk to about systems and all things systems change. But yes, today is very much an introductory session. So today we're going to be planting the seeds of systems change. And then you can nurture those however you most want to after this event. Feel free, to get in touch if I can help with anything else. So what I wanted to start with is, I thought I should probably introduce myself. I always forget to do that because I get too excited. So I'll do that quickly. So hopefully you can see here. I'll just make my full screen. Hopefully that works. So hello, my name is Mairi Lowe, for those who don't know me. I'm from Edinburgh and I'm based here. That's where I work and live right now. In a nutshell, I went to university to study fashion management in Aberdeen at Robert Gordon University. Great course, not much in sustainability back then, but I know they're working on it, as all courses are. While I was there, I started volunteering for a social enterprise called Alicas, who are not currently operating, but they gifted bespoke clothing parcels to women in clothing crisis and survivors of domestic abuse. And that was really the kind of turning point for me, where I realized that fashion could be a force for good. So that really encouraged me to look into and explore sustainability, and kind of push it that little bit further. So not just about the environment. I'm sure everyone here knows it's not just about that, although that is a very important part. And so that was my kind of undergrad dissertation here. I made a little ebook, which you can read on my website, about encouraging more sustainable consumer behaviour. And then from that, I graduated, panicked, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So I decided to go back to uni. I did a master's at Glasgow Caledonian University, which I just graduated from last year. So for that, while I was there, I kind of just was itching to do something and take some action. And what I noticed from my undergrad ebook research was that there's so many amazing people in Scotland doing so many amazing things, but they maybe necessarily don't talk to each other. And not that they don't want to, it's just that, the kind of infrastructure isn't there to enable people to connect, and work together in the ways that we do want to, because we are a very collaborative community, which I'm very proud of. And so basically, while I was at uni, I met Lisa, who is not here today, but she's a very important part of all the work I do right now. We help each other a lot. And we launched together with a small core team, Sustainable Fashion Scotland. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in a minute. And I'm going to be kind of providing some examples of our work. And we launched February 2020, and throughout this talk, just to kind of explain some concepts and give some examples. And then after that, I again panicked, and COVID was around, didn't really know what to do. So I kind of discovered system studies while I was doing my research for my master's. So then I went on to the School of Systems Change, which is with Global Nonprofit Forum for the Future. So that's where my main kind of system learnings have come from. I started that last maybe September, I think, or June. No, September, I think. So also just a disclaimer, like I'm not an expert about systems change. I don't think anyone is really. So I'm just sharing, beginner to beginner, and hopefully help you get on your sustainability systems path. So that's me in a nutshell, and I've left some links here if you do want to find out any more about me. And very quickly, the kind of reason I'm here, I guess, is because I'm a founding member of Sustainable Fashion Scotland. So we are a community-led social venture, and our mission is to connect the fashion community in Scotland and also to facilitate the sustainable fashion transformation, or revolution, that we need. And we do this through our strategy, which is collective impact and then knowledge exchange. So again, I'm going to move quickly over this because I want to get stuck into systems. But the main two parts of what we do, which we've been kind of developing for our strategy, one is community capacity development. So, just bringing people together, giving them resources, knowledge, all that good stuff, and enabling people to help themselves, I guess, or create change. And then systemic impact is kind of the research we're doing, gathering insights from the community. It's very, community led, from lived experiences, to help us identify the most impactful opportunities for change that we can then work on through collaborative action. And just a few things, what that actually looks like in terms of what we do. We've been doing monthly community calls online. The next one is next Thursday. So if you are interested in the topic, there is how can we engage a wider community of change, which is obviously very necessary for transformational change on a national level. And we also have a book club every 2 months. The next one is on May the 12th. It's Fibre Shed. If you haven't read the book, we have a list of kind of free resources on our Instagram. So if you just want to read a quick article and then jump in to learn, that's totally fine. I haven't read the whole book this time because I've been really busy. And then the last one we have is our magazine, which we published in December. So that's got lots of community contributions. And if you would like to read that, it's just a really nice insight into what is happening in Scotland, and it's very hopeful and positive. So it's a nice, refreshing read when often we do talk about the kind of overwhelming problems in fashion. So that is myself and SFS in a nutshell. Next, I'm going to ask you to participate, which I know can be a bit scary, but I promise it'll be fun. So I'm just going to ask you, hopefully you've got even a scrap piece of paper, a napkin and a pen, if you would like to draw. And you don't have to share the drawings after. So even if you want to draw in your head, that's fine, but it's good to use your hands. I'm going to ask a couple of people afterwards, though, just to share some kind of initial thoughts on systems and systems change, what you'd like to learn about maybe. So I'm going to attempt to set a timer using this. And I'm just going to go for 1 minute. I'm not expecting a masterpiece. So off you go. Just whatever systems change means to you, or if that's, you're not too sure, just how change happens. It can be as abstract as you want, and you can include words too. So I'll just let that run, and I'll be silent to give you some thinking time. Great, it worked. Cool. So as I said, you don't need to share your drawings, but if anyone is feeling confident enough to pop your mic on and just share some initial thoughts on even, why you came here or why you were interested in the topic, that would be really nice to know. But just feel free to jump out. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Mairi. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can.
So this is the old systems,
Cool.
and this is the systems that we need to get to. So it's very basic, but sometimes the most basic things are the most difficult to work out. How do we, and I appreciate that if I would actually add different, more, because I kind of think as individuals, we're in the middle, but we've got all these wider systems that we're part of, whether we know it or not, whether we think that we're part of a system that makes clothes on the other side of the world or not. We are, because we're wearing them today. So yeah, that was it. I'll let someone else answer.
Thank you for sharing. I love I love the circle, and just the it said the most basic things can be difficult, but then adding in the kind of embedded systems, and yeah, it's I mean, really, if we could draw spheres, I guess that would be the best way to do it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I'll just show you mine. So I just had, you need to be willing to make change, you need to have the conversation about it, coming together, and then actually doing something about it, making an action.
Great. Wow, you've got like a whole model there of change. Can't believe you did that in 1 minute.
No, we were talking about it in a call before.
Oh, cool. That's great. No, that's lovely. Thank you for sharing that. I love the diagram, the circular process as well. So it's not a linear process. And that's
Yeah,
really,
exactly. Need to keep it going.
yeah, definitely. Cool. And yeah, you've got the doing conversations. That's all there. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
I'll move on to the next bit, which I am going to ask people to speak more, but if you're not keen, I can talk more as well. But I just wanted to show this little graphic that I made up. So the Fashion Revolution Week kind of title or mantra this year, I guess, is rights, relationships, and revolution. And I don't know if they meant this or not. I know Ruth's on, maybe you can enlighten us. But for me, it reminded me of the 3 R's of sustainability, which, we talk about reduce, reuse, recycle. So I've scored them out here because I prefer these 3. And I did wonder if anyone maybe wanted to just share any thoughts on what this kind of graphic means, or the words rights, relationships, revolution, or why I've scored out those ones. I see Ruth says yes, exactly. So I'm glad that, yeah, that interpretation makes sense.
I just want to say as well that there's another organization called the OR Foundation, and they use the same kind of idea of like the 3 R's or the 5 R's or like however many R's there are to turn it on its head to say, I can't even remember the 3 R's, but it's something like reparations. I'm going to have to look it up, but yeah, basically like removing that kind of very baseline surface level, like let's not use plastic straws, and like getting a bit deeper into like actual justice as well. So that's the idea behind it.
Thank you for sharing. I think it's like reparations, restorations, and something else. I feel like I've got a screenshot of there somewhere on this board. If not, I'll mention it again at the end and link it. But yeah, the OR Foundation are doing a lot for the kind of deep systemic structural issues of injustice. So they're definitely worth checking out. But that's thanks. I didn't know that was kind of inspired by that. That's good to know. Yeah, I guess maybe then I'll just kind of build on that. So the reason I scored it out is when we're talking about systems change, it's not good enough to just kind of look at the outcome of our problems. So we need to go back to the root of the problems. And that's where the word radical comes from, which I've stolen a wee screenshot here from Common Threads, which is also in the kind of Fashion Revolution manifesto sort of thing. So radical comes from the Latin word meaning root. So basically, when we talk about radical change, we're talking about change that happens from the root of these problems. So that's just what I really wanted to highlight with this, is that I feel like reduce, reuse, and recycle only focuses on the symptoms of our problems. It's about, well, we have this waste now, or these issues, what can we do to kind of treat it now it's happened? Whereas looking at the root cause of problems, rights, relationships, and revolution is very much, going just a deeper level and deeper layers into the structures that then cause the problems that we then treat as symptoms. So I hope that makes sense. I've written it down on a little graphic that you can maybe you can download these, I think. And this is, the bottom one is a definition of systems change that I found that's kind of like, a lot of people have said, yeah, that's a good definition. For me, I prefer the root cause and symptoms, just because it makes more sense in my head and I can kind of visualize it rather than shifting the conditions, like what are the conditions? And also a very important part is the advancing equity, which just links to, social justice, and who are we creating this systems change for? It should be for universal kind of well-being of people on the planet, not just the people in power, and those sort of ideas. So hopefully that makes sense. And Another thing with systems change is it's both a process and an outcome, or both a verb and a noun. So as an outcome, system change is like what we want to achieve. So the kind of emergence of a new pattern, like we've done it, yes, we have changed the system. And then as a process, it's more about how we approach this, all the strategies and the interventions in order to reach this, magical outcome that's probably quite far away, but it's important to think about how we approach this. So it's just good to kind of be aware of that. And that links into kind of systems thinking mindsets, which I'm not going to touch on too much here. But again, if you are interested in learning more about that, systems thinking is a really good one to look at. So, and now we've kind of defined systems change, tick that off. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I do have the chat up so I can have a look, or if you want to jump out. But just in the interest of time, I'm going to move on to the next bit, which is what actually is a system? What on earth are we talking about? Because there's so many different types of systems. What does it mean? So I have a few examples of systems here. We have a clock, a bicycle, and then the fashion system. So I just kind of wanted to ask here, well, any initial thoughts on maybe the differences between these three, or any similarities, or anything that jumps out at you that, I don't know, you're unsure about? If not, I can go on, but yeah, just any initial thoughts on maybe the differences or similarities, or what you think a system is as well.
I found the concept of time, I was looking into that. I don't know if this is a bit of a, digression, but time can be very punitive. It can be, we have to do things in a certain time, or it can be supportive in recognising that all resources are finite. And if we don't recognise time, the time aspect of them, then we can, like we've done with the world, we just think it's going to keep on giving us stuff. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what I'm thinking when I look at time. I think, oh yeah, the system of time can be seen in different ways.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I've gone a bit more literal here, and I'm talking about a physical alarm clock, but I love repetition. No, it's totally, it's very nice to hear.
I'll listen.
Don't worry, thank you so much. That makes total sense. Sorry, I maybe should have explained that more. So basically, the idea I wanted to get across here is just a very kind of quick definition of a system. So one of my favorite ones is by Donella Meadows, who is like kind of a pioneer in systems change. She's not alive anymore, but she's done a lot of work to kind of contribute that. So basically, this is her quote: but every system is made up of elements, interconnections, and purpose. And I just had these examples to kind of talk through what that means. So if we take a clock, for example, the elements of a clock are all the bits and bobs, all the mechanics, all the numbers and the I don't know what's in the clock, all the metal, all the physical parts. Then the interconnections are how they are, they're put together, how they react to each other. When it reaches a certain time, it knows to ring the alarm, that sort of thing. And then the purpose of a clock is to tell the time, or maybe it's to wake you up in the morning, or maybe it's to look nice and impress someone if you have a really fancy clock, or like, Big Ben, it's a tourist attraction. But I guess the main purpose would probably be to tell time, but there's a few different ones there. And then the same with a bike, the elements of a bike are the wheels, the handlebars, the brakes. The interconnections are how they all link together and move when we interact with it. And then the purpose of a bike is probably to get you from A to B, maybe to increase your health, maybe to look cool again, don't know. And then if we look at the fashion system, I wonder if anyone maybe wants to have a go at kind of putting it into this sort of framework of like what the elements, interconnections, and purposes of the fashion system. No, that's okay. I can go. I can start as well. So if we think about the fashion system, maybe the elements are the people, the garment workers, the big CEOs, the consumers, the repairers, the menders, the fabrics themselves, the cotton, the farmers, all these different parts. There's a lot in the fashion system. And interconnections, again, is how they all interact, even, you know, how people and thread interact to create garments, that sort of thing. That's a relationship and interconnection. Relationship's another word for interconnection. I should have said that. And then purpose. I think this one's a bit more tricky for fashion because, you know, if you enjoy fashion, you probably say, well, the purpose is to, you know, express creativity or make me feel good or have a social activity to share with my friends, that sort of thing. And that's a point I want to make here, is that the purpose of systems are very subjective. So depending on your kind of role and your unique perspective, you might see a system differently to someone else, which is, I find it a bit hard to get my head around that, because when we're talking about, you know, reality, you know, think it's factual, there's one reality. But if we are talking about the fashion system, I would say the purpose of it currently that is most real is, you know, for economic growth and profit. And the reason for that is because the people that have the most power are the ones that have kind of created this purpose. So that's kind of the dominant purpose on a global scale of fashion, which is why we're having problems. Because, you know, everyone here, that's not what we want the purpose of fashion to be. So there's a conflict there. So again, if I'm going like too fast or not making sense, just let me know. But the main reason I have all these different examples here is to show the difference between simple systems, which is a clock and a bike, and then more complex systems like the fashion industry. And I've got a few things here, which I won't go through all of them because I think I've probably put too many confusing. This bit is me just getting excited with words. But the main point about complex systems compared to simple ones is that they have multiple paths to multiple solutions. So what that means is, you know, for a clock to tell the time, there's only really one mechanical process to do that, because a clock can't transform itself. It does what it's made to do. But the fashion system, there's so many different people and so many different parts that have opinions and have power and influence everywhere interacting. It's a bit overwhelming. It just means there's not one specific solution to solving the problems of fashion, which is a bit scary, but also exciting, because what that means is there's lots of different ways we can get involved, and that we need all these different solutions working together to create this change. And it also means that there's not just one kind of fixed goal at the end. So, you know, if a clock, it's to tell the time or to ring the alarm. With fashion, that means we can kind of decide what we want the purpose to be. And there's like loads of possibilities of the future that come out of that. There's not, you know, there's not kind of a step-by-step guide on how to fix fashion, which again is, you know, it can be a bit overwhelming, because it's like, well, where do you start? And I think we just have to start and do something and figure it out as we go. So that was the kind of main point I wanted to get across there. If you take away nothing else, just that complex systems have multiple paths to multiple solutions, and hold that with hope, in that, you know, there's lots of good things going on right now. We are working towards a more positive place. And also that all these systems have been designed, which means that we have the power to redesign them. And I think maybe it was Karen that said, like, you know, we see ourselves kind of in the system. So it's good to recognize that we are part of this system rather than see it as a kind of abstract external thing. Because we are inside it, which means we are able to, you know, prod bits and see what happens when we try this and experiment, and all that. So that was the kind of key lesson there, is just there's multiple paths to multiple solutions. And I've shared a little drawing I did a while ago in my notebook of a big ball of knotted thread, which would be just horrible to figure out on your own, and probably not possible if it's so tangled. So there's lots of different people getting involved, working together, doing different things, to, you know, to resolve all these problems. So is there any kind of questions on that? Or does this make sense? Cool. The last thing I'll just say there is that systems are subjective depending on our perspective, but the narrative with the most power is the one that dominates. And that's why currently the fashion industry works for economic growth and profit, even if we don't want it to. And this is, you know, the kind of key problem we're looking at. Thanks for the comments in the chat. Another thing, I've written here, look at my clock. So this is the next part. And I've realized I've left my clock in my living room. So you're just gonna have to imagine a clock. Here's my clock. It's a black alarm clock and it's broken. It doesn't tell the time. We might say the system is broken, you know? This clock's broken, doesn't work anymore. What's the point? But actually, I would say the system isn't broken because I have given it a completely new purpose. So this clock is now my Wi-Fi clock. And if I turned it round, if I had it, you'd see a big white sticker on the back with my Wi-Fi password and login details. So now the system works perfectly because I, the one with all the power, because no one else cares about my living room alarm clock, I have changed the purpose of this clock. And from that, I have then redesigned the system to fit this new purpose, which, you know, very simply, I stuck a sticker on the back of it with my Wi-Fi details. So that's a very simple breakdown of how changing the purpose of a system then lets us start to redesign how it works in order to get to that purpose. So I've said purpose a lot. It's also like, you know, the goal of a system. So purpose or goal, either of those words, is such a crucial part in systems change. We need to know what direction we're heading in and what we actually want the systems change to look like and be. And then we can figure out how to start designing change strategies in order to help us get there. So I hope that is hopeful as well. And obviously fashion is more complex than an alarm clock, but the same principle goes, so it makes sense. Yeah. So after that, I just wanted to talk about some research I did. Just check my time. I'm doing great. It's all good. I've taken some notes for this because it was a wee while ago now. But basically, I did my master's in social innovation last year. And my dissertation was looking at sustainable fashion Scotland. So it was to help us with our development to kind of see where we could have the most impact in Scotland to help bring about this change. And I didn't really know what systems change was when I started this. It was just through the reading for literature review that I came across some stuff, and then I discovered the whole world of systems theory, and like it's changed my life. Like it's genuinely so much of my personal life now. I think in systems as well. It's been great. So I hope some of you are excited as I am. Yeah, but basically the main purpose of this research was to look into how the Scotland-based fashion community could catalyse systems change, and as I said, what role SFS could play in this. So there's a quote here which kind of got me started, and it's by Kate Fletcher, who you've probably heard of. So this is, growth fashion is not understood for what it is, a business model tied to a specific set of economic priorities. We created it, we can create something else. And this is from her article, which is an invitation for systems change. She didn't talk a lot about, you know, what systems mean in this paper, but it's kind of implied throughout it. And I've noticed in Earth Logic, there's a lot of systems language, so she's definitely using this framework in her work, which is really nice to know. But yeah, this was kind of an invitation to explore how we can, you know, create something else, as she says, create a new system, and that isn't about growth and profit. So that was the kind of the driving force for me. And I was very interested in who the we was in this. You know, she says we, she doesn't specify who that is exactly in the paper. And I think when we're talking about fashion and what needs to change, we do often say, you know, the big industry needs to change and the government needs to put in regulation. But as we know, that's probably not going to happen right now, or at least to the extent that we need it to. So I am just impatient and want to figure out what else we can do if we're not involved in big industry and government. So that's why I was kind of interested in looking at collective action of citizens, or communities, as we call it. So I have a whole literature review chapter on the word community and what this means. So if you are interested in that, I can send that over. For this research, what I ended up doing to gather my data was I analysed 5 change frameworks, which were all about community approaches to systems change and kind of how we can do that. very much the process part rather than the outcome. And then I also did a focus group with people in Scotland who are working in sustainable fashion. And that was a very positive space. I used a kind of strategy called, or methodology called, appreciative inquiry, which we use in SFS a lot. And it's basically just about looking at the existing strengths in a system and visioning the future rather than just focusing on the problems, although we also consider them. So it was a really nice, empowering space to hold. And it helps us feel a bit more powerful rather than powerless and overwhelmed. So from this research, I then created, as a kind of final output, 5 guiding principles that SFS should follow to help us kind of facilitate change. So we operate now as a kind of a backbone organisation, is the term, or basically a facilitator of change. And this just means we're not the ones doing the change ourselves, but rather we support the incredible community to connect, collaborate, and then create change together through kind of coordinated action. So I'll very briefly just kind of explain what these are. And these are kind of similar from the 5 change frameworks. I've just adapted it to suit the Scotland specific context better. So number 1 is that we align to a shared vision. And this really links to the purpose of a system. It just means, we kind of plan and create what this vision is and then get people to agree on it so that we're all working towards the same thing and our actions are aligned rather than people kind of doing loads of different things. It doesn't mean we're all doing the same actions, it just means we have the same goal in mind. So then we work through our individual and collective projects to achieve that. Number 2 is research. So this is just important and basically means kind of getting community input and participation so that it is really kind of relevant to the people that the issue affects, I guess. And also just making sure any of our research is evidence-based, or any of our change kind of strategies to give us a better chance of being more effective, I suppose. And number 3 is engage. So we engage diverse perspectives, and it is include everyone. We might change this to something like prioritizing equity, although equity is kind of implied throughout all of these as well. But this is really important for systemic change. It's a lot to do with, again, the power aspect, and including marginalized voices in any change efforts. As I said, systems are subjective. There's lots of different people involved. We need to understand all the different perspectives in these systems and on the issues so that we can create equitable solutions that work for everybody. We don't forget about the people that are already being left behind. So it's really important to make sure we are engaging a broad view and many different perspectives, even if they're kind of conflicting ones that we don't necessarily agree with. And one thing I'm very proud, we did get some funding recently that means we're able to start paying our community call speakers. And the reason for that was so that we can start maybe engaging people that wouldn't be able to commit the time to do that if it wasn't paid. So I'm quite excited. That felt like a nice step in the right direction, leading by example. Number 4 is enable. So we enable capacity to thrive rather than prescribe solutions. And this really links to the multiple paths to multiple solutions. Just means, we acknowledge there is not one silver bullet solution. We're not trying to tell people exactly what to do. Rather, we believe that the people in the community know what they're doing. They're the experts. They're the one doing this fantastic work. We just want to make it as easy as possible for them to continue doing this and to collaborate with others to help improve their work. So this links to kind of knowledge exchange and the events we host and just creating space for people to connect, I suppose. Number 5 is we learn and adapt continuously. So in complex systems where things are so unpredictable, we don't know what's going to happen next. It's just very important that we have a learning mindset and we're very open to the idea of change and uncertainty. Because, the only thing we can be certain about is that we can't be certain about anything. So this is another one I struggle with sometimes, especially when someone's like, what's your 5-year plan? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, who knows what the world's going to look in 5 years? I'll think about that then. So yeah, it's just making sure we check in regularly to learn from what we've done, what went well, what didn't. Also to look at, I use the word data a lot, but like the lived experiences of people, the feedback we're getting from the community, what is working for them, what other support do they need as time goes on and things inevitably change around us. So it's just being very aware, maybe zooming out, looking at what's happening in the environment as a whole, to make sure we don't just pick one strategy and say, yep, this is it, we're going to do it, and then not be open to change. We have to be very adaptable in systems change. So basically these kind of underpin everything we do at SFS, and we're working to, you know, see how we can kind of more formally implement them and make sure they stay in, and also to reflect on how they are working and if they do need updated as well. So from this, there's a little report which you can read. There's a link here afterwards if you are interested in reading a bit more about each one. And yeah, the only other thing I wanted to say from that piece of research was I also found some kind of systems level strategies, is what I called them. So this links to kind of operating at all levels of a system. And this kind of pinpointed some of the most, what I found from my research, some of the most impactful opportunities, looking at both top down and bottom up. So how communities can kind of get involved, but also how communities can influence the people at the top. So I won't talk about that right now because I want to move on. Oh, and yeah, I was reading back over my systems studies notes for this. So I thought I might read this out just to give you an idea of where I was a few months into my studies. And the reason it says Fave Song Kesha is because they were making a playlist for everyone on the course. So they asked us to journal for, I can't remember exactly how long, a few minutes. And the prompt was, when I think about myself as a systems change agent. And my answer was, I get excited and feel like I'm in the right place at the right time. It feels like a good way to approach complex problems and to contribute and give back to the world. It is a big challenge and one I am starting to realise the enormity of, but with feelings of humbleness rather than fear or overwhelm. I can't do everything and I may not see the idyllic change in my head in my lifetime, but I know now it's about the process and not the outcome or destination. Systems change isn't the result of one person or one organisation's efforts. It is the result and emergence of multiple people, movements, actions, connections over time and at many levels. I'm happy to play my small but impactful part in this change and do good and be kind along the way. So it was quite nice to look back on that. That was December, so it's been a wee while. I feel like I should maybe pause. I feel like I've said quite a lot. If there are any questions or thoughts anyone wants to share. The only other thing I wanted to touch on today was to show you some frameworks, which I got excited about and thought I could go into each in depth, but I don't have time for that. But I have put links to each, so if you would like to learn more, you can. And then I had some just key learnings at the end of what's been helpful for me, kind of as I've been learning more and trying things out to make sure I don't get too stressed out or overwhelmed. But yeah, is there any thoughts even in the chat?
You've articulated it and explained it very well. So thank you very much. It's good to understand how you can affect change. And as you say, it's not about necessarily being a big player, but if through something like this, if we can understand that we can all play a small part, then you don't feel out of your depth, you don't feel overwhelmed, you feel as though you can actually contribute. Because if you feel as though you're not able to contribute, then that's when apathy can set in and you just go, what's the point? Whereas when it's broken down and thoroughly explained like this, then it does engage other people and you feel as though there's more likely to be a positive outcome rather than it's just all being swept to the side as big industry just slams on, which is fantastic.
Thanks, Jackie. I'm glad you feel that sense of hopefulness as well.
I do, and I've been looking for it for a long time.
Yeah, that's why I'm so drawn to systems. It makes it seem very real and tangible and practical and possible, which is important. Yeah. And occasionally I do wake up in the morning and think, what's the point? But we push through that. And also, you know, the whole point, I think I've not said this explicitly, but you can probably guess systems change is definitely a collaborative process. It's not, well, I have said that not one person can do it themselves. So also, I just love working with people that are equally as engaged and creative and interested in creating this change. So that definitely helps with motivation. I'm excited for more in-person events once, you know, we're allowed to do that again. Yeah, thank you for sharing, Jackie. And thanks for some comments in the chat as well. I see we've got a wee bit of time, so I'll maybe skim over the frameworks and tools. And thanks for your positive feedback as well. I really appreciate it. So the first two here, the multi-level perspective tool and the iceberg model, I've written in pink notes what they're kind of all for. These two are very much for understanding and seeing the system, is a term that's used quite a lot. So it's a good one if you can have a go at this yourself afterwards. This one is from the course I was on. I think I'm allowed to share it. So basically it has some questions on the kind of 3 levels of where we are. One is landscape trends. So, and they have some questions to help kind of prompt you fill this in, but this would be things like capitalism, you know, big concepts that kind of affect how the system or the world is right now. Regime is like day-to-day things. So it asks like who are the stakeholders, what's maybe, why do we need it to change, what's not great right now. So that might be, you know, landfill and that sort of thing, like kind of physical things that are happening. And then niche is my favorite part, which is emerging innovations. So this is all the good stuff that's happening, even if it's small right now. Where are these ideas coming from? What are they doing? Is there any kind of key themes, or, you know, even like better funding support or government looking to get more involved, those kind of things. So kind of signals of change. And then the idea is we can kind of build on them and bring them into the regime so they become more mainstream and then help change the kind of landscape. So they all interconnect and work together. The way I did this with Petra from Repair Hub and Lisa, we did a big messy map and it was huge. So this is just a screenshot, so you can't zoom in all the way. But it was quite interesting because like Petra does a lot with second-hand clothing and recycling infrastructure. So she did a whole bit on this, which I had no idea about. And then I was looking more at local kind of charity shops and community action. So there's a real mix there, and we ended up, like, capitalism's obviously here as a big one, but this was just us getting brain dumping everything, and then we kind of moved over and put it into a diagram like this to help make sense of it. So if you are ever totally confused, I would recommend just opening up a Miro board or paper and pen and just brain dumping everything down, and then try and, you know, look over it and pull bits out and make it make sense. The second one is the iceberg model. So this is one that I don't use a lot, but apparently it's very popular. So I thought I should probably show it, even though it's not my favorite. But this is another good one for understanding the system. And it's good for if you have a kind of specific event in mind. So I've written as an example here, the Rana Plaza building collapse. So the idea is, you know, that's what we can see, the tip of the iceberg, but obviously underneath there's all these structures and things that have led to this happening. So, or, you know, like Donald Trump becoming president, like that didn't just happen out of nowhere. There was lots of things over time that led up to that. So I'll briefly do the Rana Plaza example, but I think that's a good one. Maybe each, you know, you could go and do yourself. But so what just happened? Well, the building collapsed. Not good, obviously. Sorry, that was not the best way to say that. And then for patterns, it's like what trends there have been over time that kind of relate to that. So there might have been multiple accidents, or, you know, people, just a real lack of safety standards, which obviously we know did happen. And then structures, it's like, well, what has influenced these patterns? And this is a bit, you know, as you go down, it becomes a bit more complex. So it's got policies and laws. So yeah, maybe the policies weren't great in place for that regulation. And then mental models, which is about mindsets. So this is, again, a little more abstract, but maybe some assumptions there. I'm not sure. I'm going to let you think on that and try that yourself. So maybe you can get back to me. But it is a good model for understanding. Personally, I prefer leverage points, which is the next one I'll talk about. These 3 bottom ones. So building better systems, as a paper, but it has some stuff in it. And then leverage points and 6 conditions of systems change. these are more about designing systemic interventions and change strategies. So my favourite is Leverage Points, Places to Intervene by Donella Meadows again. I think I'm probably not her number one fan, but she's a big role model, big icon for me now. I just say, Ruth said, would you say historical context is important for these kind of deep iceberg parts? And definitely, I probably haven't touched on that. But when we are talking about, structures, and even in the MLP, like the landscape, a lot of those things will be historical. And when you are looking at a system, it's up to you to set the boundaries of that system depending on the purpose of the discussion. So often historical context is very important in that, because if it's happened a long time ago and it's still prevalent today, that just means it's so embedded in our systems that would be a very, if we can shift that, then everything else would start to turn. So it definitely is. I'm probably can't say much more in that, because it's probably one I'm still learning myself, but it is important. So yeah, I'll keep that in mind as well when I'm working on more. But for leverage points, this is my favorite diagram on the right that I used in my academic paper, but I've heard it can be a bit daunting. So this is a nicer illustration. And the point of this is Donella Meadows identified 12 points in a system through her, experience and work, that we can intervene with change strategies to create more effective change. So sorry if I didn't say that very well, but basically the further up you get, the harder it is to change, but the more effective it is. So I'm still struggling with paradigms a bit. They're a little still abstract in my head. But for example, the system goal is number 3. So it's a very hard one to change. If we're talking about fashion, growth and profit, that is very kind of set. However, if we could change that and get enough people on board with power and influence to agree to that, then everything else in the system would start to shift to achieve this purpose. If we were able to actually make this the new purpose everyone agreed to work to, like big industry and stuff. So that's a really important one. And system structure as well is one of my favorites. This is also called like self-organization. So this is about kind of basically evolution, or if you're in a community, it's people's ability to create change themselves and adapt. So that's what we're kind of working on, is enabling people, giving people knowledge and resources so they have the power to go off and do these things themselves. So I definitely recommend this one. And I mean, I like this diagram, so maybe you can have a look and see if it makes sense to you as well. I wouldn't bother trying to figure out what 12 to 7 mean. I mean, if you want to, you can. I don't really understand some of them, but the whole point is they're not very effective anyway. That's kind of what we're doing right now, tinkering within the existing boundaries of a system. So I wouldn't bother with that. I would look at 6 to 1. And if you click on the link here, there's a really good article by Meadows that explains them all in depth. So if you are interested in finding out more, I would do that.
Mairi, is it possible, I'm sorry, I'm a dinosaur. Are we able to download all of this? I've been screenshotting, and I was wondering, is it possible to increase the size of the ABSAM et al. Or
yeah. So I'll post the link to the Miro board. Wait, maybe I've got it already. Oh yeah, I'll post this. I've just posted the link there. So yeah. You have access to that now. So if you want to bookmark it, I can maybe send out an email the next couple of days with the link if anyone wants to have another look. But yeah, you can. I've set it so you should be able to download images as well, and you can zoom in and add sticky notes if you want. And
cool. Thanks very much.
That's all right. And yeah, a lot of them have kind of squares in the corner which are links to learn more or read more.
Okay.
Cool. Now, I've just saw Scarlett's comment. I know it's been such an awful time, but do you think COVID has pushed for systems change as small businesses have grown from it and more people are shopping local? I think it has. I think when it happened, there was a lot of talk in the kind of systems spaces about how it was an opportunity for change. It's that kind of period of transition and where things are a bit unstable, and it's up to us to kind of choose, well, are we going to go back to normal or are we going to change? And unfortunately, I think we have kind of started to go back to normal a bit in some regards, But I do think it's been a very good wake-up call and has probably opened up a lot more people's minds to, this, not this exact same crisis will happen again, but just to the severity of these, and that clearly there is a problem affecting this, why this happens. So I hope it has raised awareness of the need for systems change in people's mind, and maybe open some, governments' minds up to take a look at these kind of frameworks and tools, and change their mindset a bit more urgently than not. I'm just conscious of time, so I'm not going to go into the other three in huge depth, but the Building Better Systems report is another good kind of introduction to systems and systems change, and very practical on how we do this. It explains about power, relationships, purpose again, and resource flows. This is kind of 4 keys to unlock it. So, I think I've got the end here. None of these are like the right way to do it or the wrong way. Find the one that works for you and for whatever specific situation you're looking at. There's some of these that I use quite a lot, like leverage points. Some I don't really use the iceberg. Maybe I should more, but yeah, it's worth having a look. And then the 6 conditions of systems change is part of a really good report, and there's a webinar on it called The Water of Systems Change. And this one I like again because it's just quite practical, like policies, practices, relationships, mindsets kind of thing. It's quite a good one to, be a bit more practical with. And then collective impact is actually a strategy I analysed in my master's research, and it's basically the kind of strategy we're starting to follow now for SFS. So I just thought I'd pop that in if you don't have a look. It's about community approaches to systems change. Like the first one's creating a common agenda, which is what we are now working on with our current research project. So I will let you, there's links there, go through it. Feel free to message me if you want any more. I've got loads. I've got so many quotes saved on like all these things and links, so I'm happy to share more. Just before kind of wrap up, I just wanted to share what my key learnings have been so far, and reflect on that. It's funny, when I did the systems course, I think everyone went into it quite head driven, like can't wait to learn all the frameworks and the tools and make change. But actually it was a very like personal growth experience as well. I ended up crying on the last day of the first week because it was like I was so happy. So that's been really nice, but I'll just quickly go through them. So there is no one right method or tool with which to practice systems change, and nobody is an expert in a field that is so complex. No one has all the answers. So don't worry about doing it perfectly, just do it. And these are reminders for me, because this is things I struggle with. Second one is, remember you're not alone and nobody is able to transfer systems as an individual. We need to connect holistically and collaborate intentionally to create change together. Let go of the need to control everything in such a linear way. Create space for new energies to blossom and learnings to emerge, which kind of links to the 5-year plan. Focus on what you are doing and what you are able to do, rather than worrying about what you're not doing and what you can't do in your current situation. So again, reflecting on your kind of role in the system, what impact you can have from your unique position. And most importantly, I added this one in the end because I know it can be quite heavy. Remember to make time for joy, to celebrate how far you've come, the experiences you have had, and the people you have met and helped as you continue to learn and grow. Systems change is for me at least, it's been a very personal experience as well. And the whole point is we're changing these systems so that other people can enjoy them, but that should include yourself. So don't forget to take time to relax. You're probably doing a lot more than many people. So yeah, just be kind to yourself as well as the world. I think I've got one just final image here. So no one's life mission is to solve climate change. Someone told me that. Not one person is going to do that. We really need collaborative community approaches to create this change. We can all be designers of change. Start where you are and do what you can, or act at your level of influence, which is a term I saw on the Soul Factory, but I couldn't find the screenshot for this, which is why I didn't include it. I don't know if they deleted it. But yeah, that's just another shout out to them, and from the OR Foundation. Oh no, that was the Soul Factory. Wait, maybe it was it was the OR Foundation. I'll double check that. And it was one of them. They're both great accounts to follow, so I would check both of them out. And then very lastly, there is just one quote which I don't really know this man very well, but I thought it was a very nice quote, and apparently he's quite big in systems. It says, "I take hope in knowing that what I and a growing number of others are doing is the right thing. If I worried too much about success, it would paralyze me and prevent me from working. If we are to be successful, we need to articulate an alternative to the current system and then try to make it happen. And that is what I'm working towards." And I feel like that's what I'm working towards and what we can all work towards. So I'm probably going to hop off to let the next person on, and I'll stop sharing. But thank you so much for spending this time with me. I hope it has been hopeful at the very least. And if you would like to learn, I'll just pop the quote, the Miro link in the chat again. And feel free to message me. I'm on Instagram at Mairi Lowe or Sustainable Fashion Scotland. So yeah, please get in touch. Very happy to share the learnings. Thank you.